supposed to be live. We are.
Hmm.
Kathy's sitting next to me. And I'm going to advertise to the other websites as usual.
Hmm. You don't think it's confusing to have the same name?
No, I changed it.
It looked like it was the same. It
It
says
starts
our.
the same, but
Oh, okay.
it
It's
has
a little
more.
confusing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I would think, oh, I already watched that.
Oh, so should
I
I?
mean, I know right now that it's,
Yeah,
but it is a little confusing if I'm, scrolling through and looking at your stuff. I would think maybe I already
yeah,
watched that.
I can
I
see
wouldn't
that.
change it now, but if we
Right,
you remember, I would change it later.
okay. Yeah, I can see that. Hello, Finch. Greetings to you.
All right.
There's so much in this tape 259, so we're going to keep on chipping away at it. X is taking a long time to load. Maybe I got too many things in my memory. I do it quite a bit. Huh. Let me stop that and go to Facebook and see if that's better. Yeah, Facebook came right up.
So, hello to everybody while Sawyer's doing that. I will be the disembodied voice in the ether. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize how close I was to the microphone. Could do a little bit of ASMR,
Yeah, Kathy does
a
that.
little bit of clicking. I don't do
No,
that.
you don't do much of it, but
But
there's
coloring
that
is
effect
kind
you
of,
get
yeah, coloring
when you
is
do
kind of
your,
ASMR-y.
yeah.
Are you done advertising?
Yeah, I think I am.
Good.
Oh, but let me, let's see. So I labeled this our lunacy or fantasy off the first name, seeing the darkest side versus better than other options. That's what I wanted to focus on more on that point
Mm-hmm.
on this series actually of tape 259. And let's see, I just glad I get a few more things right here. Yeah, I wanted to go through my notes a little bit. So I'm not going to get right to that subject right away, but I'm going to go to another point. While maybe some folks have some time to come in if they want to. And that has to do with not acknowledging violent influences, and which is part of the definitions of the content of tape 259. And that came about as a result of I guess I did address it a little bit, but it told me a lot about how you don't want to the more energy you give to something, and even words and thoughts, of course, and the more you are actually uh, um, potentially stimulating it. I guess is that the way to say it, Kathy? Do you remember from the tape? Well, I can put some of the
Well, yeah.
thoughts in here that Doe said that I have notes about. The other night, I guess Doe was saying in this tape that he had been talking with Arthodi, uh, a student that ended up dropping out in 1998, approximately, um, expressing that he was seeing some images or thought forms of a violent nature in the room. And he feels like it's very out of place to even acknowledge it. When you have thoughts like that run through
Hello, Joseph Coates.
when you have thoughts like that, run the thought away, because by acknowledging it, you can add to it.
Yeah.
That's what Dale said. And he kept on talking about it. These are thoughts of a violent nature. So you want to run them away, and you don't want to add to them by acknowledging them, even.
By dwelling on it, and
Yeah,
he didn't say that particular time, I don't think, but
right. That's all he said about that. Because then he went on to talk about the Help Wanted meeting. I don't know if I went into that very much. I didn't use those notes to go into it, so I should do a better job of it by going into his notes. Because they're talking about, I didn't intend to talk about this, but I do want to go in the order of the notes. So, because you'll see later on, it talks about our lunacy or fantasy. And what I realized I didn't, let me go back to that title first, because in the first tape we made, the live stream that I made a few days ago, I just labeled it lunacy or fantasy, okay? When I should have put in there the word hour, because that was part of the definition that the class gave to that part of that audio tape. And it's a very important part, because they're not trying to identify something as lunacy or fantasy, except from our own perspective of being, if it is a lunacy or fantasy, if you want to entertain it that way, in order to entertain the darkest side of it, that it's our choice to have that lunacy or fantasy.
right.
And you could say that about all the religions. You could say that about, people thinking that carbon pollution is going to accelerate the heating up and ending of the planet somehow. Destruction of the planet or the human kingdom. That can be a fantasy also, and other things. I'm just bringing that up as one secular idea, about that people believe in. You know, you can sum it up as believing in a certain presidential candidate, you know, and or a certain authority on a subject, or a certain university professor, or you know, a musician, or you know, anything in the human kingdom. It doesn't have to be anybody that became anything. There's people that you know you believe in your family members and your spouse and things like that, and they can all be fantasies to some degree, and they can also be seen by others as lunacy. It was always interesting. I wrote a little song. I don't remember even what it was, but it was called "I'm a Lunatic. I'm a tick on the moon." That's what you know, my second line in the verse.
It's a very clever song.
I like it a little bit. Anyway, so I'll have to read it to you one of these days, or try to you know do it with a harmonica backup. But not right now. It's a waste of time. But so they were saying, which is the reason I put it in the title, our lunacy or fantasy, seeing the darkest side versus better than other options. So that's the part that Doe is talking about, how he examines the darkest side of things. He tries to talk himself out of certain understandings, or maybe it's better to just go to his notes, it would be better. So I won't go any deeper into that at this point. But the bottom line is that after you go through that, what he arrives at, which he's, which they actually gave us this as a practice to go to the dark side of things. And the dark side in the context of being in the classroom meant leaving the classroom and not graduating. Okay, so that was listening to influences that wanted us to remain in the human kingdom, or give our faith to something in the human kingdom, our belief in something in the human kingdom, or our attention and all that as our ultimate uh, um, seeking, or ultimate thing that we believe in, or person that we believe in. But so so one of the things that what they would say, and I've told this many times, is that they'd say, okay, stop what you're doing, and wherever you are, or go to a place to where you have a little more privacy, and go into your own head and think about whether there is somebody or something you want to do in the world. You want to leave the class. You know, if you were going to leave the classroom, if you wanted to, what would you be going to do? You know, what attracts you in the world? Because so that we were supposed to do that until they rang the bell for the end of that, and usually it was about 20 minutes, you know, probably at the most, that they gave for that little exercise. And it wasn't presented as an exercise, but it was presented as something that we do. Tiendo said, "This is what we do. We force ourselves to go into the, you know, into the depths of uh, against what we're doing. You know, anything other than if we want something else in the world or whatever, and in the human kingdom." And then what they would end up doing is thinking, well, let's say we're not from the next level. Let's say we're not, you know, older members from the same family that Jesus came from, and all that entails, and and we're just well intended, and we have some interesting ideas. You know, uh, are we going to change anything we're doing? You know, because of that. And the answer that they would always get is that they can't imagine doing anything else. And and I couldn't imagine doing anything else when I would go through those periods. I didn't have anything, anybody, or anything come into my mind that I wanted to do different when I went through that experience. Maybe we did that um, 5 times or 4 times in the course of the 19 years that I was part of the group. But it was actually, that was an organized way. Didn't mean that you couldn't do that on your own, but that wasn't really instruction to do that on your own, because they didn't want you to be opening the door over and over again, because you can let in those negative thoughts in that regard. For that classroom, those would have been negative thoughts to think about somebody in the world. Regardless of how close you were to that person, you were choosing to sever that tie. You know what Jesus said is the sword of the mouth, I believe. That the next level requires that when the older members are in the flesh, and you get in touch with them somehow, and they say to you that if you want to follow with us, then you've got to leave everything behind. And that's what happened to some of the disciples of Jesus. They, whatever degree that was applied, I don't know, because if they had somebody in the family that was living in the same town, then they might, well, if they were going off with Jesus actually and camping with him and stuff, which is I think some of them were doing, then they were no longer acting as the primary breadwinner for their family, or a husband or wife, or there weren't any females in that group depicted that way because of that time period where that would have been really looked down upon by authorities of the religious community and the government probably. But so it worked that way that the disciples, for that lesson step that they were in male vehicles. But that doesn't mean that the souls that were in female vehicles, because there were, I believe, souls in female vehicles at the time, they just didn't need that same lesson uh, um, that the ones that were in male vehicles needed. And so it didn't mean that one was better than the other, even though to the human world, it looks like, because they're quoting Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and all that, they're highlighted as being like saints, right? Because of that, when they're not necessarily saints. They're in the overcoming process potentially, as long as they stay in it. Anyway, that's a little side way of looking at some things, but um, so so then after we were done with that period that I'm calling an exercise, which wasn't a ritual or anything, uh, they didn't really have rituals in the classroom. Uh, Maybe not at all, because things changed all the time. Even if they started something and they asked us to do it at least once a day or once a week, whatever, uh, um, which were different circumstances that were like that, they made them optional after a couple of weeks of doing it as a regular routine so that it wouldn't become a ritual and so that it would be truly our option to do it, which goes to other points in this audio tape that I talked about. and the previous audio tapes that I talked about, to where Do doesn't want anybody uh, to be with him because they were told that they were from the next level, or, the- or they have to uh, well feel that and 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 demonstrate it. If because you're not gonna you can you can feel things that you're not demonstrating. I'm not saying that you can't. That everything you don't demonstrate is necessarily uh, um, a big hurdle to climb. Uh, um, but it can be. I recognize that. Uh, but it's all got to come about from our own free will. So I mean, like when Tiendo first started to talk on the stage, uh, that I went to the first meeting, they were saying things, and I wasn't scrutinizing what they were saying. I didn't know what they were going to talk about. From the little poster that I saw and the little statement that I read and barely understood, what it meant. It was all like new to me. But then at the same time, it was like, this is exactly what I believe. It's like, I mean, other people told me all kinds of stuff that I didn't believe about the different religions and stuff that I was studying. I didn't believe what they were saying. But in this case, it made sense to me. And even though I later learned that I didn't really understand a lot of it. And that was a constant situation that even continues today. When I listen to the tapes again and I realize how little I actually got, it really verifies so many things that T and Do were teaching all along the way. And that it's a completely voluntary experience because you can't just fill your head with scriptures and think that you're getting closer to your older member or your Heavenly Father. I mean, I shouldn't say can't maybe, but I think that's pretty accurate to say. And then Jesus talked about that as well, that, the use of vain repetitions uh, diminishes um, uh, um, uh, the value of them, or the force that they have, to where it makes it vain. In other words, it's done with no value to it. You say the Our Father and Hail Marys over and over again. How many times you say, like a ritual, right? And are you really thinking about that you're talking to your Heavenly Father and you're asking that individual for what their will is for us? Thy will be done on earth? What do you want me to do? That's what that prayer that Jesus gave us to use was asking for. It wasn't asking for you to, can you give me this? Can you give me a house? Can you give me a good job? I mean, even though we can do that in our asking of the highest source we can imagine, or refer to as our Heavenly Father or God, and and they may give it to us, but the reason they give it to us is because if it's a human thing, is because they want us to have experience to where we can prove to them that we're not satisfied with that we're actually asking for something more, hopefully, in their minds. Because if we're not asking for something more than a good job and stuff, even though that might work for the moment really well, and they may even approve of it, but if we're satisfied with that job once we get it, and we never get to the place of asking for their will, you know, do you want me to have a job, or do you want me to do something else? Or if we're not asking for that kind of openness, uh, well, it just means that we're going to have less and less of a communication with them. from us. I mean, and they're gonna give us the lessons that can still help us get to that point to where we ask them uh, more for what their will is for us, because it is about uh, giving your will to your heavenly Father. You know, in the religious terminology, which really means older member in the physical many-membered kingdom level above human. The creators of this planet and the life forms on it to make it to build it into an astronaut training program to become a god astronaut, a true god astronaut, not a space alien god, demigod. Is that proper use of that?
Mm, 100% sure, sorry.
Yeah, astronaut. Anyway, uh, so Doe was genuinely over and over again talking about how we have to choose to grow in that direction by asking for the help and asking for their will to be manifest through us. And we don't know if it's going to be manifest through us until we see the signs of it sometimes. We get little glimmers of things, you know, which is, of course, we'd be flunking another lesson if we let that go to our heads and think that when we did get the glimmers, that made us into somebody more special in the human kingdom. When it's not, it's just members of the next level don't think on that way, and so they don't vibrate on that. So if they have those thoughts, though, they would recognize them as from the lower forces, and they would discard them because a next level student or a next level member doesn't want to build themselves up. There's no reason to do that because they're not trying to perform for other humans or other even students of the next level.
Ah, sorry.
Was it an
Something.
ant?
I don't know. It's still crawling on me, whatever it is. Knee-jerk reaction.
Okay, little booger, little ant booger.
I don't know if it was an ant or a spider.
Okay, well that's a good segue. Um, oh yeah, here I'll get right to what Doe said about it, which has to do with that help wanted meeting. And he says he wanted to talk with us about something he didn't like that he found out about in the help wanted meeting that we had for Mercodi. And to where someone said to Mercodi, as if I understand correctly, during that help wanted meeting, just say the phrase. Just say the phrase, which was referring to the phrase, I could be wrong. Oh, there he is. It's a spider. It's a little spider.
Where?
He went onto that, right in there.
Okay. Where's my spider jar?
I washed and threw out the tick that was in it. The dead tick.
Yeah, unfortunately ticks can't live, but spiders will attempt a rescue.
So just say the phrase is what somebody said, and it might have been me. I don't know if it was. But,
Aw, you're so sweet. You crawled right into that jar. Oh, and there's water in it for you to drink.
Where was that jar?
Thirsty. I just walked over there and got it, and then I put it
Was it
down.
in the drawer down below there?
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't have put it away with water in it.
Well, it worked out. She
All
was
right.
pretty thirsty.
Okay.
Hopefully not drowning, but so that was unexpected. Well, you asked for help and you got it.
I'll just. Well, now I want to finish this thought. So, so what Doe didn't like about somebody in the help wanted meeting saying to the person that was asking for or that overseers asked to have a help wanted meeting for, I think Mercody might have asked for that one. But I'm a little confused about which help wanted meeting that was because I was at one that I remember and I don't remember talking during that one. But I might have. Anyway, but that Doe said about that saying that phrase to Mercody because that was the lesson step he was working on. He had been working on for some time that you can hear about in previous audio tapes when he was in a vehicle as well, where that phrase "I could be wrong" came about. And I'm not going to go through all the basis of that right now, even though I have many times. But that Doe can feel that that's an appropriate thing to say to your own vehicle to get rid of something using that as a tactic. But he didn't feel that it's fair to employ it to others. Certainly not at this stage of the game, he said. He said it's more right to try to find out what is troubling the individual you are trying to help and say, how can I help you? And giving them energy, every opportunity to exercise their thirst. And then not telling them what to do. No one, okay, so not telling them what to do. Then he then he continued to they'll continue to talk about um, that no one should stay here, even stay in the class, if you don't see the value. And it's up to them to ask partners or helpers or links in that progression. Ask what is it that I'm not seeing, to not see the value of this in this. So like if somebody um, so again he's saying that class members needed to ask each other. Well, they put not each other, not just anybody, but ask because everybody in the class was it wasn't like an open conversation to just go to anybody in the class to talk to them about you know things that you wanted to improve or you wanted to see differently or you wanted to understand better. That wasn't part of the classroom. But with your partner, at certain times in the classroom, that was approved.
Appropriate.
Yeah, it was appropriate. And T and Doe introduced that to us. You could probably hear it in the audio tapes previous to this one, but I don't remember it exactly right now where that happened. Where they told us you can talk to your partner about what you heard in the meetings.
Mm.
It wasn't automatic
Yeah, I remember
because
asking you.
you remember that.
No, I just remember asking you about that. Like if you guys discussed what you'd heard about in the meetings.
Right, and we didn't at first
Yeah, I remember you saying.
because they didn't want us to. Well, at one point they didn't want us to just be talking all the time because we were trying to. Uh, um, block out the past, and a lot of talk would go on about the past. I know because I was part of some of it. Because just because they said they gave us that instruction didn't mean that didn't happen.
Well, it's hard not to.
It's right. It's hard not to. But it shows that if you don't
Trying to
have the
get to know
willpower
other
to force
classmates.
yourself to do it, then you don't learn the value of, of stopping those thoughts. Because the time that you're doing that, you're not focused on the classroom.
Yeah.
And they did say right in the beginning, in fact, that's what attracted me about the poster. It said that there were individuals that were giving their all to this effort of the process of, of becoming a member of the next level above human. They were, in whatever terminology was exact to that poster at that time, because I end up summarizing, with a non-historic order to the phraseology and things like that. But
What part of the tape were you talking about?
the
The
beginning,
help wanted meeting with Mercodi.
yeah, that's what it's talking about now. But I'm past that part to where he's talking about. He goes back to it though. Yeah. Uh, in other words, asking for help. Like, how can I help you? Like, the people in the help wanted meeting would have been doing better to ask Mercodi how they could help, and then what the class members would do in that help wanted meeting was listen to what Mercodi had to ask about, and then if they were trying to be in tune with their older member, they would ask their older member in their minds, it wouldn't be out loud, is there anything I can offer? And I remember actually doing that in one of the help wanted meetings with Mercodi, thinking about um, what can I say to maybe help, and I think I admitted to that in that tape 259
Yeah.
that I had that thought, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm remembering it now. Actually, I didn't remember it the last time we talked about that tape. Um, so that was interesting, but. Um,
Would Doe have been at that help wanted meeting?
no, T and Doe didn't come to help wanted meetings. They didn't even come to our slippage meetings. We had somebody recording what was taking place.
Okay.
Usually, like Melody did a bunch of that. Song already did a bunch of that.
Okay. You can go on.
Yeah,
I didn't want to get you off the track.
yeah, it's okay. It's good information. I meant to say that before. Um, so that's another example, though, of how T and Doe weren't trying to um, be like an overlord over us all the time. You know what I mean? If they would go to the help wanted meetings, then uh, they were just going to observe students, but students weren't going to act the same if T and Doe were there. It's just automatic that that's
Mm-hmm.
not the case. When your teacher is with you, then you know you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to say natural kinds of
Mm-hmm.
restraint built in. You want to be on your toes and do everything right, so then it won't be such a natural though response that you'll get. And and they want to know. They want us to exercise uh, their mind, the mind from the chief of chiefs. Um, but they want us to do it because we ask for it, and they want to see us the changes that take place by doing that. And there will be changes that take place um, for somebody that's genuinely asking for that help. And even if they're not directly asking for that help, they may get it in ways that, you know, they might not receive very well at first, but then they might think about and think that that was some help that I was asking for. Um, Finch was saying to me and Kathy that he felt that about one of the last live streams, somebody that was saying some certain things. Um, that person, may end up changing their mind about those things. And I've had that experience um, to where somebody said, uh, told me that they were seeing the Tiendo teachings. I'm summarizing in a light that they hadn't seen before, and that there was someone in the past that they were very adamant about against, and so they were coming at it, with anyway, whatever that means in that person's circumstance, which I can remember happening. So Doe continues to talk in the tape 259 that I'm taking from my notes, that when the students were talking with Mercody and with Arthody, the students put pressure on them to do what you thought was right. And then he said, there's nothing wrong with putting pressure on them to help them find the stumbling blocks that are standing in their way, and then use themselves as an example and saying I could be wrong, but if that influence was attacking me, I would do so and so. That's an example of how Doe would approach that. So, I mean, by using the word pressure, I want to put that in context. We at a Help Wanted meeting, you didn't have people like saying, "Why can't you understand this?" Or treating people in any bad way. Although some, I can remember Tall Odie. See, I didn't remember myself so much, but I remember Tall Odie said something to Mark at the Help Wanted meeting, Mercody, that was very abrupt, and it just had an edge to it in my mind, as if like well, Tall Odie had a very direct way about him. He would call a spade, and plenty of times he was right, but he had to learn that plenty of times he was wrong. And being with T and O, you learned how many times you were wrong by being in the course of being in the classroom. Uh, I mean, literally seeing something in a way that wasn't accurate, not seeing the facts of a circumstance. That's what I mean by being wrong. But almost everything I say, I hear a rebuttal to in my head,
Well,
and so I have to choose which ones to address and which ones not to. So then, Dawn went on to say that if he was Arthody or Mercody, he said I'd have no choice but to do what you're telling me, and in that circumstance, they want to do what's right, and then it becomes dishonest for them to do what you are telling them to do. because they're doing it because those classmates told them to. See, that shows that same way of thinking of a member of the next level. Another facet of it. Doe always approaches different subjects with a number of examples of how he and his older member and his older member's member has given them to think about something, how to think about something from their own experiences. Doe pulls on the experiences he had waking up with T and coming to recognize that T was his older member, his heavenly father, his individual that ushered him into graduation into the next level kingdom on board spacecrafts as big as planets that can be that are laboratories for the functions of the Earth and the weather systems and everything.
Did you want to go to the chat?
Yeah. Chat, oh chat window, where are you? Hard on possession. Joseph Coates, feel like I heard Mark being brought up a lot during tape 259. Oh, old school Dave, I'm sorry. Woo-wee. Okay. And Joseph Coates, hello. Greetings to you as well. And Joseph Coates says, feel like I heard Mark being brought up a lot during tape 259. Yes, he was. And you said that early on, so you didn't know I was going to talk about that part of it more in
He might
detail.
have been talking. He might have said that when you started talking about it, babe.
Yeah, maybe.
That's been. You haven't gone to the chat for a while. That's why
Yeah.
I asked you to go
Yeah.
there.
So Steve Jackson says, hey, Kathy and Sawyer. Sawyer, did anyone in the class ever argue with Doe or have personal issues with him despite his position as the shepherd?
Yes, and they left.
Well, I guess you could call it arguing. I don't know. See, I mean, I can talk about when somebody, after the fact, I learned disagreed with Doe on different things. But during when we were in the classroom, I wasn't privy to any conversations that Doe had in private with any student.
Unless they brought him up, he brought him up in a meeting.
Right, unless he brought it up in a meeting. And and I don't know that I can remember any meeting that Doe used the word argue. Okay, there's one circumstance I can say that could be interpreted somewhere close to an argument was
well, even in this tape alone, talking about Rakoti and how Rakoti said, Rakoti, I don't know, he might have even said, I don't know, he probably didn't say Rakoti argued with him, but he said Rakoti just could not stand Doe telling him that maybe he was just a human and not from the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an example
yes,
of
that's an
somebody
example.
arguing with Doe.
Well, yeah, but in a good way, I think, in that case. It's not like an argument where he's countering what Doe said.
Well, he couldn't believe that he wasn't. Doe said, perhaps you're human, and Rakoti said, no, I am not human. I am from the next level.
No, you're right. You're right. God is exactly right. That was a...
And that was literally in tape 259. The tape.
Okay, well that's a good example then. That's the best example.
Actually.
Yeah, it's the best example.
But what was the one that you were thinking of? Because I'm sure people want to.
Well, the one was where there were sometimes in the audio tapes you'll hear them actually working out problems, like in like the making of food, which we called fuel, and the preparation of it being an experiment. And anyway, so you'll hear them talking about solutions to problems like that. Okay, in the normal running of the whole operation, with the laundry and the car fixing and all kinds of things, right? And so T&O would sometimes give us a new procedure on how to handle something along those veins. And and one time, I think after they whether they came up with something or not on the spot, because sometimes they would take those reports that they were asking about, that they got like reported to them about before the meeting, and they would say, well, they would just think about it and deal with the people that were involved the most. But sometimes they would deal with it with the whole class present, okay, because there were lessons associated with those things. But anyway, so sometimes they would come up with solutions, and sometimes they wouldn't. So sometimes they were just opening the door and not even necessarily asking the students for their input on something. And a classmate would say something about, well, why don't you do it this way? Wouldn't it be more efficient? I think was the word used by R30 one time, I remember. He said, wouldn't it be more efficient to do it this way? And T&O on the spot said, well, we're not trying to be efficient. And it was like, so that was an example of where somebody else was arguing for their kind of point of view on how to treat a circumstance. And T&O didn't argue back. They just told that they weren't trying to be more efficient. That wasn't their basis of making decisions about things. Even though some of their decisions ended up being more efficient than other things, but that wasn't the motivation that they were having. And so for R30 to bring that up was became a lesson for him at that moment. Like I got lessons also in the classroom, and you can hear some of them in the audio tapes.
Everybody does.
Yeah, everybody pretty much. I mean, if somebody never spoke up during the meetings, which there are some that never really said much
That you just don't hear.
at all, yeah, and T&O would have worked with them individually about that. It wasn't necessarily wrong or anything. But they did like to hear from us, because by hearing from us, they could see what we were grasping and what we weren't grasping. Because they had tremendous overview that I didn't at the time recognize. Well, I knew they did, but I didn't know the detail of how they did. I learned that later. That's why you can't say that we were brainwashed, because I didn't know what to change out of my brain. I didn't know how to change my thinking to next level thinking. I didn't have a clue what next level thinking was. But then when I heard it, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And if it didn't make sense, well, then that would be something that student, if they wanted to stay in the classroom, would want to work on. And they would write a note to T&O about it. Say, I don't know why this didn't make sense, and that would become an opportunity for T&O to work with them more directly on that one issue. And then they could choose at that point to say, well, that, yeah, I understand it now better, because if they're really wanting it, they'll get some help with it to get past something that was troubling them. indirectly. I mean, without direct communication from Tiendo about it, because Tiendo had helpers that weren't in physical vehicles. Well, they weren't in human physical vehicles. And there were some that had personal issues, and I don't really know much about those things. I just know that though it's very clear that he, he doesn't think of any of the classmates in a human way. And oh, what happened? It broke.
No, I used it all.
Oh, that's the
But
last
I
one
have
of that
a
one.
refill, never fear. I
Okay.
cannot be without my coloring supplies.
S. Cook, hello. All
And
right, so I'm caught up on the chat room. So let me move on to the next point in audio tape 259. So that part about to me is such a huge point to make in my mind that well, let's see, Steve Jackson. You no, let me finish it. Just to recoup it or whatever, emphasize it because of how what it means to me to show my older members thinking and in a factual way, not a an interpretive way that that it was normal to treat your own vehicle to tell it what to do. That was a good thing to do, to tell your vehicle what to do. Um, and so you don't do anything on automatic really in that classroom way of teaching. Um, and so, but to tell somebody, a fellow student, what to do can only happen if they're asking for it. And then when you do it, um, the way that you do it is also showing that you don't know if this is going to be helpful or not to them, but this is what they would do if they were dealing with that same problem. I can see lots of applications for that in the world. I mean, I know psychologists use that kind of strategy, I think, plenty of times. Maybe, after all, the next level has given the human kingdom everything that's good about it, and they've provided everything that's bad about it as an option to help people seek the good about it and grow their minds stronger. Steve Jackson says, in the exit interviews, Vernody seems like a goofy kid and said he got in trouble a lot. In a good way, I'm assuming. What was he like? Well, I only met Vernody. I didn't have. He became a member of the crew in 1994, and I don't know if I was the first group. I was overseer of a group during 1994 when we were going public around the country. Okay, myself with a partner, and it happened to be middle Odie, check Odie, or even Odie. I think during that 9 months or so, it was my partner as overseers. And if somebody joined the classroom, they might have joined from having attended another meeting that I wasn't a part of putting on, because there were like 4, 5, 6 groups, like the group that I was with, that were traveling around the United States giving public meetings. And so Doe had and his crew, his little crew and his helpers who were part of that, that weren't giving meetings, uh, were keeping overview of those that were responding to meetings with wanting to follow with us, wanting to go with us to the next town, to and believed in what we were talking about in the posters that you can see in the Heaven's Gate book. And Vern already might have been sent to be in the group that I was uh, with, during that time. And if that was the case, I really didn't have much interaction with him. I can remember seeing him, and but I was trying to be of service to Doe in putting on meetings and dealing with the media and all kinds of things. And the ones that were joining at that time were one of the first tasks they were given was to watch the Beyond Human series of tapes, because they were all done by then, made by then. Um, and so they, like, even if we were staying in a motel, they had a different motel room, so they could focus on that, and they were together. There were a number of students that had just joined that were together in the motel room adjacent to the one that I was in with the other members of the crew, of the 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 members of that group, because we only had like 6 or 7 members of each group. But they began to grow, of course, because of new people joining. Uh, so all I can say is I didn't have any personal things to say about Vern Odie. But he seemed, I mean, I felt like I liked him. He had a nice vibration. I remember that. And some of the new ones, were quick to making suggestions on how to do things, and so he didn't have that vibration that I could see. Not that people couldn't, voice themselves, but it's a process of learning how to communicate in a next level crew in a next level way. And people in the human kingdom that are used to being with groups and humans, or groups of humans, they may think that their opinions are useful, but if they're not not trying to come up with the opinions that their older members would have about a circumstance, it can be quite a distraction, even though sometimes they can be in tune. And so if somebody did volunteer something, you wouldn't want to cut them off. You wouldn't want to hear what they have to say and think about it. And I can remember having some puzzling times while I was overseer in the groups in 1994. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So Steve Jackson says, and thank you again for answering my questions. Also, do you guys take donations? I appreciate all your responses. Sure, we'd love to have a donation. Um, you can send us a case of refried beans. I'm only joking. But
The shipping would be a lot,
yeah,
probably.
yeah, it wouldn't be worth it for sure. Because we can buy them for $1 or $1.50 a can.
Here in the Midwest, we could meet up and you could give us some. No, we're I'm being silly. No, we have a, what is it, a Venmo?
Yes, if a
A
Venmo can
Venmo.
work for you. Is it the one that's should I tell them right now?
Sure, and isn't it in the
Kathy
description?
Southwestern, right?
At
At Gmail.
Gmail, yeah. And
It's
didn't we used to
Kathy
have
with
it
a
in the,
C.
yeah, we used to have it in the description, didn't we?
We did. We at one point we did put a whole bunch of description in there about because we also have PayPal, but PayPal takes money from us.
Yeah, we
So
don't
if
like
you do
PayPal.
send us something through
Don't send
Venmo,
us PayPal.
then send it as a gift. Don't send it as a
Transaction or a
transaction
sale or whatever.
or a sale or anything.
Because sometimes people select that. Not that we get a lot of donations or anything, but if that's selected, then Venmo takes. It's a small percentage, but still, it
Right.
But whatever. We appreciate anything anybody does, for sure.
Yeah, we certainly
We have definitely,
can use things.
yeah, been able to get by sometimes by people giving us.
Yes, we had an
Things here and
experience in
there.
San Antonio where we
Well, I
were.
mean, even just with like people buying books, because you have a book,
Right.
like you can purchase a copy of Sawyer's book, and that helps us financially too.
Yeah.
And then you get a 900-page book out of the deal.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in the book that I think are useful.
Yeah, 100%.
Not all of it, of course. It's because I didn't actually do an edit on it, like an overview and edit. I read the whole book from start to finish, and because I would have been doing it for another year.
That'd have been quite an undertaking.
I've been wanting to rewrite everything.
Yeah.
'Cause
No,
I would
think it's
see
good
how.
that you put it out.
Why did I say it that way and say it that way? I didn't. I
Yeah.
didn't talk about this. I didn't talk about that.
Sometimes you just gotta
Yeah, I just had to put
hit
it out.
enter.
What's the Venmo address? I heard Kathy Sawyer say Kathy something, but I didn't catch. I'll put it in the chat.
Ooh, that would be pretty red.
Is it gonna let me put a .com in there
No, I don't think so.
so I can spread it out though?
Well, is it really necessary? Everybody knows. You can just say it.
Kathy Southwestern. It's Kathy Southwestern with
Well,
Kathy with a C.
type that in. That's the whole point of typing that in.
Yeah.
And then you can just say at gmail.com.
Yeah. No, that's
you
what
don't
I'm doing.
Yeah, you don't have to type at gmail.com. Just
No, I know. Okay, so let me see if I can go to the next.
yeah, that is what it is. It's not sawcat575 at gmail.com, is it?
No, it's not. It's
no,
Kathy
it's not.
Southwestern. I've given it out before a number of times. It's correct.
Oh, Mom messaged me.
I'm not. I should say I
Yes,
could
you're
be
right.
wrong.
I'm sorry. I've been so lax with, and it's not like we. Yeah.
So like Doe said in the tape that if he was Arthodio Mercodi in that Help Wanted meeting, I know I'm repeating myself, that he'd want to to try to do what the classmates were suggesting them to do.
I have to show you
And
something.
wait, and that would be dishonest for them to do it on that basis.
I have to show you something.
Oh, he got the letter. Yeah, good. There was no delay
But
on that.
nothing from the BMV yet, so.
So we have to go up there and get that, right?
Well, we might as well. The BMV should be coming within a week or two.
Wait for that.
We might as
Sure.
well. I mean,
Sure.
unless we want to. I mean, we could take tomorrow off and.
Oh, he just sent something, I guess. Steve Jackson did.
Oh, I'll confirm that. Hold on, I gotta talk to Mom.
Yeah, Kathy will confirm that in a minute. Steve Jackson. Thank you. So I'm going to just restate that again because if somebody wants to do something because somebody told them to do it, Doe is saying that that's dishonest. They should do it because they want to do it, not because they were told by somebody else to do it. That's a next level way that it works. So, and Doe talks about that, how, he doesn't want us to be doing all these procedures because it's part of the classroom. We got to do them. He wants us to do them because we want to do them. We see the value in them. And believe me, it's not too hard to see the value in the procedures that were given by T and Doe. But our influences don't want to see that. Our discarnates and the space alien souls, if they happen to be bombarding any one person with their mind, their ideas, their thoughts, or through humans, told by the government, that's the way that the space aliens, try to control humans, to have a certain amount of order in the world that they are running for the most part. I mean, they're not running the world, they're running the human kingdom because they're behind the motivations and things of those that become the leaders of the human kingdom, and even throughout all the human kingdom. And that's why it's so hard to imagine that there's really a kingdom that created this
Oh, I was supposed to.
earth and the human and the life forms on it, because that's like a fog. The space alien souls have created the fog of the mind, so that we can't hear those little voices inside that we all have, even in our genetic code, that are meaningful. We don't see them as meaningful a lot of times. We don't, it becomes ordinary to us. All the miracles that we watch all the time in our lives around us, all the life forms that are growing and everything, all the systems within systems that are dependent upon each other.
System.
Yeah, complex systems and
Like
genetic
AI.
code, and like AI, but so much more complex than AI. Tremendously, billions of times more complex than anything in the AI. AI is primitive.
Hey, watch it. That's my field of study.
I'm not saying that primitive things don't have its value. A hammer is considered to be pretty primitive, but it's got a good function.
You are are. I'm gonna learn a lot about AI, and I'm gonna sick it on you. Maybe. No, I
Okay.
would never do
All
that.
right, let's do that. We'll have a AI debate.
Eventually.
So did it go through?
Oh, I got distracted with my coloring.
Can you check it?
Yeah, I have to get my iPad. There's just so much technology, and I'm
Yeah, Kathy
going.
doesn't have any technology.
I'm working on this. I'm working on coloring.
Mm-hmm.
You want to show the?
But Steve Jackson was
Nobody cares
sending
about
something.
my coloring. Just show my color.
While you get up and check that.
I don't have to get up. It's right there.
Can I? I can check it. You can check it on your phone, can't you?
No, because my phone is all full of everything, and it's on my iPad, which is right here. It'll take me 15 seconds.
You used to check it with your phone.
I know, but I don't have that app on my phone anymore
Oh.
because it takes. I don't have a lot of space
Okay.
on my phone.
I hear you. Okay, I understand
Do
now.
you hear me?
Yes. Jason Bartell said something, then he took it away.
Jason Bartell. Carloti! Hello.
Hi, Carl.
Hello, hello. It's good to see you here.
So, okay, so Del goes on.
Yeah. What am I doing? I'm checking the wrong damn thing. There it is.
Now, Doe also says about this help wanted meeting for R30 and Mercody. He says, he says that he didn't think that much harm was done to have a.
Refried beans fund. Yes, it came through.
That's what he sent us?
If you include an address, we'll send you some goodies.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's
We need the Refried Beans Fund.
yep.
We
I
don't
can
get
never
government
figure this
assistance.
damn thing out.
Not that I wouldn't take it if I could get it.
Yeah, I think you can.
But you gotta be, you gotta be totally, without the ability to eat
We don't have
in order
like
to qualify.
a huge like big packet to send or anything, but we do have a couple of goodies that we can send if you. I think if you. I'm not that familiar with Venmo, but you can just put your address on there so it's private, like only that I'll be able to see it, not like everybody. I don't know if that's a possibility. And then I'll mail you out something.
Or you can send it to an email, our email address.
Yes, which the email is, you can send it to me, kathysouthwestern@gmail.com.
Right. If you just want to keep it private, which I can understand.
Yeah, I don't know that Venmo thing if you can post your, because people have put their address on there.
Yeah,
And
but it
I've
might be
sent
too
stuff
late
to
for
'em.
that because he's not going to do another transaction. So.
No, you can still.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, you can like add
Oh.
friends on Venmo and
Oh, I
you
see.
can send
Well, I'd rather not
messages. I
not
think
have
I
his
don't
address
know.
out there on Venmo.
Well, it's not like out there anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, just send it to the email address. That would be, and
I wonder if
and
our
we won't.
neighbors
You
are
won't be on the
leaving.
mailing list. I gotta qualify, right?
We have a mailing list. No, we
No,
don't.
right. We don't have a mailing list, and
You think we'd be more organized? Since I was
he doesn't know Venmo well either.
Oh yeah, well
So
then
he'll
just
email
us.
He's gonna email it. Okay, great, Steve Jackson.
Because it is fun, the little stuff I send out to people, I think.
Yes,
Oh, that was
yes. I
stupid.
was thinking that we would do that.
Yeah, of
I was
course.
thinking about mentioning that, and I just got distracted.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Kathy did. So what Doe was saying, that he doesn't think that much harm was done by whoever was giving advice to R30 and Mercody in the help wanted meeting, that they were both a part of two different meetings. They weren't together. But to have a better hold, to have a question or example process, it can stand a better. In other words, to make it into a question that they have, that they're asking for specifically, and to even present it to them, advice to them in a question form, or with an example of what someone else would do, what that person would do if they were going to give advice to somebody else. The reason why that's better, according to Doe, is that it can stand a better chance for it to hold with them rather than telling them what to do. Now, please, if you want to really get the gist of everything I'm talking about here, listen to the tape. I'd rather have you listen to the tape.
Many people, they are.
Yeah, I know individuals are. It's great because Doe's mind is so much more than the words, literally. And that's so influences don't really want people to listen to the tapes. But I'm not saying that if somebody doesn't want to listen to the tape that they've got an influence. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that from my experience, I don't do justice to the same kind of justice by trying to read my notes.
Anyway.
So then Doe talks about how every once in a while, and this gets to the going to the dark side part.
Or was that the violent thing?
I don't think so.
Or both?
Maybe.
No, like you said, you don't think so.
No,
I was just kind of
seeing the darkest side. I think this is related to this. Where he says that this is Doe talking in tape 259 that I've got notes of. So it's not the exact words. But he's saying that every once in a while he gets plagued with an influence that says is it possible, and probably well, he said he probably hears from this influence more since T is outside her vehicle, as he and T usually didn't get hit by the same influence at the same time. This influence says you all have the same disease and are loony at the same time. And you and T have some convincing ability to include the class members in your own sanity, or your own type of sanity.
Insanity.
It's your own your own sanity. What you consider to be sane. Your
I see.
That the influence is telling you that you're including the students in that display of your sanity. I think I could be wrong in the way I took notes. And the only way that Doe feels like he was able to cope with that that seems satisfactory is that he doesn't really care if this is true or false or right or wrong. He cares, but doesn't feel he has the choice to do what he is thinking about. Now, this is all relative. I can hear the influences, does
Well,
that mean
don't
this?
listen
And
to them. You don't have to, like,
right,
don't acknowledge them. Don't even
right,
say
right,
whatever.
right, right. So I mean, everything that they say can be seen in a negative light and be used against us. I'm saying us, but anybody that's um, going down this road of uh, learning everything about T and O that they can. Um, and if each of those things becomes a stumbling block for that person that they don't want to get past, well, that becomes the way that it's the free will. Because there will be stumbling blocks. There's no way that there can't be stumbling blocks.
There will be stumbling
Yes.
blocks. Yeah.
They give us the stumbling blocks, actually. By telling us the things that we need to change. That stimulates our influences to be upset. And the lower forces of the space alien souls, to want to keep our ears closed to whatever. And that's a big subject. That's a big process. The whole thing's a process. That's why Doe talked many ways about the different individuals that would go with him and be salvaged, if you want to put it that way, from the recycling. Being people that never even heard about him. And the influences would have us kind of, zero into one thing or this thing or this thing or this thing, regardless of how it applies to everybody. Because it doesn't apply to everybody. One thing he says doesn't necessarily apply to everybody the same way. But everybody's got the choice to apply what they want to apply. If there is no, so Doe continues to say, like, if there is no next level, then I don't know what to do anyway. Somehow he says, I can't compute that it's a happenstance and it stops with me or stops with us, like a big bang, and we are off track. He says he can't imagine they are pleased. He can't imagine that they aren't pleased with their efforts. Like with our worst state, running away our worst influence, that would question what we are doing. He can't imagine that the chief or chief of chiefs, helpers, wouldn't smile at our effort when all we want to do is please them. And the extremes we are willing to go to please them. That's the darkest part of it, and I don't find it very dark. Then he goes on to say that from his brain and its feeble attempts to reason and calculate what it was experienced, he can't understand, if we are off the track, why we are given to understand what makes the world tick and see it. If you see it like he sees it, that we wouldn't see it unless we were doing what we were doing. He says this is plain logic. There's a lot to that, and I'm not going to try to address it. But he keeps on talking about it because Al-Lodi says something, and I didn't record what Al-Lodi said. But You can hear from a number of students in this tape and other tapes quite a bit. It's not like just a lecture. And most of the tapes aren't like a lecture where nobody has anything to say in in the group. They frequently ask for questions. There's another dimension to this. Um, like came up, the name Benjamin Creme came up. Now I don't know if you all know that name, but you can search on Google for him and you'll find the way you spell his name. The last name is Creme, I believe, and Benjamin is the first name. I think it's Share International is his organization, if I remember correctly. And so I'm just going to go by the notes that I took for what Doe said about this individual, because he says that that individual had written a book, I think, that has something to do in the title with the reappearance of the Christ and the masters of wisdom, and and so Benjamin Creme was a guest on the show that Doe was watching uh, on the television. It might have been on satellite or who knows where. But and he said that other crafters like myself didn't see it, but they watched it in craft with the in crafters at one point. And and don't you think that class members could have a problem with that? You know, how come we watched it with them but not with us? Well, if you had a problem with that, then that was going to be an issue you were going to have to sort out, because they weren't treating everybody exactly the same way at exactly the same times, and we actually did watch together, I think, a documentary that had Benjamin Creme in it. That's why I know about him. So you know, anyway, so it wasn't about that. Whatever they had instructions to do from their older members is what they put into motion, and they weren't necessarily confident about that, but they didn't take chances with that either. They examined things and then they see how it felt before they would bring it to the classroom, uh, and there's a whole bunch of stuff with that people could come to understand if they started listening to the audio tapes. So he says, according to Benjamin Creme, according to Doe, uh, he says that the Christ had returned and lived in London in an Indian body. I think India from India, kind of Indian body. And at the given time, he would come public with a declaration and wouldn't have to speak because his thoughts would speak in everyone's language. So Doe thought, wow, this guy is real, then maybe we should run to his feet and see what we can learn. But the readout that Doe got from his examination of him felt like it was the same New Age teachings. So he said, Doe says that Benjamin Creme says that Jesus was the reappearance of the Christ and is the same as synonymous with Krishna and Buddha. So then Doe talks about when T was in her vehicle, and he says that believe it or not, T and he believed that about the Christ reappearance as Jesus and Christ, and then Krishna and Buddha, and and that he felt like he got really wrapped up in it. I think he and T both got wrapped up in it. And when they were living at the Amanda uh, Ananda Marga house in Portland, Oregon, this was like about 1973 or 4, that they were reading everything that they could get that was about, the Ascended Masters and the Mahatma letters, and he's not saying this in this audio, but he talked about this before, didn't
Well, and he
Margaret?
talked about they was reading and reading and reading
Yeah,
and looking at all these books, and T said, first she said, we gotta look at everything. We gotta read all these books, and then a little while later she said, we gotta get rid of these books.
right.
We gotta throw these
So
books away.
at that point, when they were all wrapped up with it, then they said that T said that we got to close these books, and they'll remember thinking that you got me into this. That whole thinking about the theosophy and everything.
Well, we just got all these books, yeah.
Then he says this was just as hard, and then he said that it was just as hard for him to stop reading all those books about, all this
Everything.
Christ stuff from the New Age perspective, as it was when he told T that to stop calling on Brother Francis, as like, help with making decisions and things. And he says it's the same picture. And then he said that he believed that Mr. Krem will wait several generations until he comes, talking about this Indian reappearance of the Christ. And he said there would be no third world war, Benjamin Krem is saying, and that the only reason that this individual is here is because man has grown to embrace the beginnings of there being peace.
That's a joke.
Yeah, and that's what the New Age movement has made Jesus into. That he was an ascended master,
Right.
and love he's all about love, and so all about peace and love, and he is among each other, because like Jesus said, the second greatest commandment was to love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you'd have them do to you. Kind of that same kind of mindset. And even have, but love isn't necessarily the word used, because there's like 7 different words in the Greek that are used as love in the New Testament. So they're not putting different meanings on all those different words when they should have different meanings. That's what's distorted about it. That's one of the things that are distorted about the records. But there's still enough in those records that is accurate for our usage to identify the characteristics of members of the next level and the teachings to graduate. Because I know there's a group of people that say that, well, it's all been doctored and destroyed, so you can't believe any of it. That's the lower forces trying to get you to throw out the baby with the bathwater kind of thing, so that you won't actually grasp the the force in the things that were recorded that Jesus said in the four Gospels in particular.
I gotta turn the space heater off, don't I?
So Doe talks about that idea from Krem that it's the growth, humans, this person's only surfacing, only here because humans have grown to be peaceful. And they hardly are, right?
Yeah.
If you look at all the weapons that they all want to have and everything, and the budgets. So Doe says that from what he knows of the kind of world, what kind of world would the next level want to manage when the level on Earth is making babies? He takes it right to the actual determination that the human condition of being a baby making condition is not, the next level doesn't do that. They're not mammals anymore. They've outgrown mammalian behavior just like humans have outgrown certain animal behaviors, even though some of the animals are probably ahead of humans in, in their vibration because humans have gone downhill, so some of them, like descending into justification of violence. Even though animals can have their violence, but it's not the way that humans bring about violence. Well, I guess it is a carryover of that, self-protection and stuff. But it gets taken to a full extreme to where, if we think that you have a nuclear weapon, we're going to blow you away before you can use it. Like what they did with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So Doe couldn't fathom that what Benjamin Krem was saying was accurate, was factual. Like, you can't be in the next level in the human kingdom at the same time, he says. He says that he and T would think about it being on a base. Well, I think about the human being on a base together. They would think about the next level base. They also sometimes called it like a heavenly body. But the humans would have to be isolated from the next level in that circumstance. I think what they said about that before was that humans might be allowed to see the next level coming and going in their spacecrafts and things. But they wouldn't be living in the same quarters. They wouldn't be in the same cities. They wouldn't be living with any more than a human would want to live in a cave with apes.
I want to live in a cave with apes.
You
No,
do?
I'm just kidding. No. No, they'll
Sure,
rip
as
you
an
apart.
experiment, fine, okay.
They'll rip you apart eventually.
Yeah, right.
Probably sooner rather than later. I don't
Right.
know, you might get along for a little while. I am going to lay down because I am really tired. I always tap out right about now. But in my defense, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Did you?
Vento says, talking to the class, can you understand why I would hope we were wrong? Because then I would have found something more right. I mean, can anybody see that thinking? It's like, whoa, I would have never thought to say something like that. And then Joe says he doesn't care if we lose concepts of who we are. It helps him understand that we are more on track than anything can be because we feel that way. And from a human logical mind of sinking to that kind of questioning, it doesn't take long anymore, certainly for him, to know where we are. So I guess what I'm referring to, if it's anybody that just joined me, it's going to be close to impossible to keep up with this, just joining. But uh,
Well, you can start at the beginning
no,
of the thing.
I'm getting close to being.
I know. I mean, I'm not saying you. I'm saying that anybody.
Yeah,
that's
they can
coming
start at
in,
the
they
beginning
can
of the
start at
stream
beginning
and
of the
get
stream.
more of the overview
Yeah.
of what we're doing here.
So it's not impossible.
Right, right. Thank you. Then, but talk about he's talking about the process of going to the darkest side and then coming out with recognizing that believing the way they do about the next level and the whole ball of wax, well, not ball. It's not a ball of wax. It's not wax. It's. Are we showing that diagram there?
I'm pointing this out to you.
Oh, Mineola. That's where my stepdad was
Well, and the other one that I
from. That's
saw
where he lived. I cleaned out his house there.
was from.
Garden City's right next door to Mineola.
Isn't that interesting?
The
that
person
that's,
probably lives around there,
No, these are Amazon printed coloring books.
but they're all by the same person.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean these are Dover publications and create. These are huge publishing companies.
All right.
Dover is a huge.
Well, New York's a real hub
Yeah,
for publishing
I'm just
companies.
saying that's where this one's Mineola too,
Yeah,
and this one is as well.
They've
'cause
got an
it's
office
Dover
there.
publication.
yeah.
So maybe we need to go there, and then I can.
We need to go there.
Yeah, so I can give them my coloring book things,
Oh, okay.
and they'll publish my coloring books.
Oh, maybe they would.
And now it'll be, Kathy Weaver.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing?
I think that's going to happen. Yep.
We'll see. Anyway, I'm gonna go lay down.
Kathy has a whole bunch of original photographs that she wants to make into coloring books. And she's got other ideas as well, I'm sure.
I do.
Yeah.
First, I gotta pass my first class. I'm gonna shut the front up, okay?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Oh my God, I'm on camera.
So then Doug goes on to talk about this idea of questioning everything and that it's got a lot more stickier in a way with commitments. Got a lot more personal, and he was reflecting on when being in California. That they were talking about at that time that like we were all in a club, and here are the rules. If we don't like the rules, then don't be in the club, because the club means we have to be 100% a club member. That's a catch. Like, what are you going through right now? And with me as your older member, the test is knowing whether you have any hesitation or reservations with your trust, as real trust and real love go hand in hand. I can't really love anything I don't trust. Anything I trust, I love, and trust that anything anything I trust, I love. Okay, sorry. So getting rid of hesitation is part of the process. We're talking about the graduation requirements. and I know the lower forces would have people say about it all, but I'm telling you that this is the way it is, and that's why the lower forces hate it. I'm not telling you what it is. I'm telling you what I believe T and Doe. What I'm not believing it. I'm saying this is what they were teaching. You listen to the audio tapes, and you'll see why. And you'll see how hard it is actually to be a student of this information uh, to the degree that the class members were. Even though it's easy relative to them at the time, easy enough to where it's doable. Because if we knew, I mean, Doe reflects in this meeting of how when T said to the whole class that which he didn't expect T was going to say, he said, "You have to give us your will." So people talk about T being, accusing her of being a hypocrite and all this other stuff. That Doe got off track and T told, him how to think about himself and everything and who he was in the past and all that. And as if Doe just believed everything she said, which he didn't. And he told us about all the details of that process in these audio tapes. You can hear different examples of that of what he went through trying to work with T. And okay, 258 was where what I'm talking about now um, was being discussed. And um, uh, well, I guess I said enough about that. But so those then started to talk to R30 directly. Oh, the campground and give us your will. Thank you. Because I remember when she said that at the meeting, uh, and uh, and I felt like it was big. I didn't understand it. I didn't have any sense of objection to it. I guess I didn't have that influence on my back that was afraid of that because I guess I had enough recognition within my conscious mind that the influences were not having a something to play on in that regard. When someone else might have that influence that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and they might have left because of that, or it might have stayed in their craw for a long time, and they didn't deal with it, and eventually other things happened, and all of a sudden they were adding up the total of what I'm leaving, and so they left. That's why it's free will. It's free will what we want to overcome, and we have to ask them for help for that. We're not going to do it on our own because the next level gives us the help to do it one step at a time. And when they give us the help, they're not telling us what to do. Unless you're in the classroom and they're physically with us, then they tell us what to do because we insist to them that we want to be told what to do. We insist that by our behavior and by our what we say and what our vibration is. There's like at least three facets to that. Like if you got a scowl on your face, T and don't know that we're not happy. I mean, can you hide? I don't know if you all can hide scowls, but I can't hide anything from Kathy. She sometimes asks me what I was thinking. The other day, she asked me what I was thinking, and and I didn't really want to tell her, but it wasn't anything bad or about her in particular. Actually, it wasn't anything that I was ashamed of or anything. But I didn't really want to talk about it because I'm not going to go into why. right now. But then she said because she saw a look on my face like I was, what was it, scared or something? Yeah, I didn't like, it's like I didn't like what I was thinking about. And so I told her what I was thinking about, and we talked about it a little bit. And it was no big deal, but it was just illustrates that when you're with somebody a lot, they get to know you. And so T and Do got to know all the students really, really well because they were tuned into each one in their minds when they would go to bed at night. They would they would think about individually. I don't know if T did this, but Do did this. I know T did some of it, but Do did it also. But Do was the primary for doing this. He would go through thinking about how he could help each student and trying to not just have a general desire to help them, but to actually listen in his mind for what thoughts he has about that student at that moment. And sometimes he would get thoughts of what that student might be dealing with. And that could even open the door for him to think about, uh, things that he wasn't threatened by, but that his vehicle would have responses to. And because of the programming of his vehicle. And so he would have a sense of, and sometimes he would go to that student and have something to say about something. Or he would wait to see if the student surfaces something, or if circumstances surface something that show him what that student was dealing with, so that he could offer them help in a way without going up to them and saying, "Are you thinking about this? Or are you thinking about that?" Which I don't think he ever did. I don't remember him ever doing that with me. And we did things one on one. Like when he asked us, you know, that when he said that he wanted to meet with each of us privately in order to, that's all he said. He wanted to meet with us, each of us privately. And when I was my turn for meeting with Doe privately, um, he said he wanted us to, um, he wanted to know whether there was something that I felt guilty about in my past, that we might want to expose or get off our chest or whatever it was. And I talked to him about some things, and he didn't have much response to it, to what I said. But he was asking us for, you know, he wasn't, like even in this meeting 259, where I get a lesson from it in the way that I spoke to Mark Mercodi in the Help Wanted meeting, um, that was not a next level way. He didn't even bring me up as an example of, he said some students were saying things. So, you know, but I brought it up because I recognized when he was describing it that I was one of the perpetrators of telling Mercodi what to do. And that might be part of the reason why Mercodi is so uh, upset with me. Not that he doesn't have other reasons that, I could understand in some ways, but, um, that I think amount to shooting the messenger because you don't like the message. I shouldn't say shooting because there's no violence in next level thinking towards one another. There shouldn't be. I'm going to leave it at that because I want to come back again and maybe talk about authority because he's next in the discussion. So I'll go back to the chat. I'll get squared up there. And if there's nothing new in the chat, then I'm going to say goodnight, folks. Hello, actor Michael Merchant and Old School Dave VD. Yeah, I don't know what that's referring to, but I can imagine I touched on it. I don't remember now. In the human kingdom, maybe. Or what humans have. Did the class members ever struggle with comparison? Asks Joseph Coates. Yes, definitely. I did also. Like comparison among class members, right? Like for example, there was uh, a time when there was a group of students that were working more closely with Tiendo uh, um, on things that needed to happen in the group. Like if somebody needed to go to the dentist for some reason, they would come and get more details from Tiendo would get more details, than the reports gave, and sometimes they would come and answer notes. This is what they were saying. They would handle notes all different kinds of ways. Notes being communication sent by the students because we had 3x5 little um, notepads where we could write notes on and then send them to directly to Tiendo, and nobody else would look at those. And but there were also notes that we would send, like let's say we had a headache and it wasn't going away, and it was distracting us from our tasks. Well, then we might write a note, and the way we would write the note would be, I have a headache. And we wouldn't put the remedy in there, even if we got the same remedy every time we had a headache from the class. We would still say the same because you don't tell the next level what to do. You don't tell the older members what to do. You don't tell each other what to do either, like I've been talking about. So it's not like they had double standards in that regard. They didn't. So you ask. And like Jesus said, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be open to you. It's the same thinking because they're the same people. The same mind is coming through at different times in the civilization. So the reason I got into that was if Tiendo came into what was called Satellite 3, which was basically just an office area, where a certain group of students were working on all these different things that needed help with. And I remember I was in an adjacent room because there was no wall between us. And I was in the living room with spare time, and I remember seeing them talking with T and Do, or maybe just T, or maybe just Do. Because Doe would sometimes come and go talking to other students about things, you know, in different departments in the group. Anyway, so I remember feeling jealous of that. And that wasn't like a wrong type of jealousy because Doe wanted to be with his older member too. He wanted to hear everything that his older member had to say also. but that it wasn't right to, the older members, uh, it was a need to know basis, and this can be taken to an extreme, which I think Mark and Sarah are doing right now. And I'm not going to go into that any further. But in terms of who gets to hear um, this or that, or who gets what documents in order to prove what points in any way in the lawsuit. Anyway, I just was reading that today, and I'm getting reacquainted with the lawsuit. So anyway, the next level has departments. They're not going to have somebody that works in the weather lab give advice to somebody that works in the animal kingdom labs, on the planet. So uh, it's that practical. We're talking about practical realities here, just the way it is in the human kingdom as well in a lot of ways. Because the next level is behind even the growth of the space aliens that are trying to bring order to the human kingdom. But the next level is also the overview of what the space aliens are doing. So they're not letting the space aliens do everything they want to do on their timetable. The next level has the final say on everything that happens here. So, anyway, I remember having that response of jealousy, and I remember thinking, that's not, even though Doe would say that you can understand that, that wasn't my task. So for me to be jealous of not having that task uh, isn't a way a member of the next level thinks. They're not there. They have tasks, and if they don't see their tasks as what they need at that point, even though they can want more tasks, nothing wrong with that. But uh, um, to make it into a thing to where they're building in their minds this jealousy or comparisons, or that person's better than I am, or they're not better than I am, so why can't I do that task? Because I know about that subject that they're talking about right now. Sometimes you could hear some of what they were talking about, but I couldn't from that distance really, because T and Do generally weren't facing us and they weren't talking that loud. So I couldn't really hear it, but I would hear laughter, every once in a while, and so, you know, uh, but see, that's like not trusting that your older members are going to share those things with you if it's something that they know that you could benefit from. So that's another form of trust in your older members at that point. And so I remember thinking at the time that I've got to not dwell on this. This is not a positive. And so, what tasks do I have? And I thought, well, I could vacuum more often. I could do transcripts. I could type in the content of the audio tapes into transcripts, which I had that task at that time. We had that task while T was in her vehicle. And anyway, so um, T talked about people in the human kingdom having the tapes many times, a number of times with T in it, and even more times with Doe, in different ways, different aspects, different context. Anyway, within the audio tapes. So, so I remember putting my mind to the grindstone, and I started to transcribe, and doing more of that, and I was happy with it. I felt that it was good. I wasn't dealing with it anymore. And wouldn't you know it that I never told Doe about that at all. Wouldn't you know it though that one day Doe called me into a room where he and Lagodi was sitting by themselves, like a sitting room, and it was a big house in Dallas, Texas. And so I went into the room and I sat down and and Doe said, "Would you like to become a part of Sat 3, that same group of people?" And from that moment on, I had the task to be in Sat 3, which meant reading a procedure book every day, and basically I was spending all my spare time looking, reading the things that were for Sat 3 eyes only. And there weren't any secrets in there, but there were instructions on how to handle this. But see, Sat 3 were the ones that wrote the procedures in the procedure book that T and Do gave the procedures for. Or they created a procedure and in response to T and Do saying write a procedure, because then they would also make a duplicate copy of that procedure and send it to T and Do so that T and Do knew that whoever was writing the procedure got it right. And I became an overseer of a craft, and one of my jobs was to do that, write procedures, and then send a copy of it to T and Do and helpers to review. So somehow the next level knew that I guess I didn't need that test anymore. But they were going to give me another test, which it was. Yes, LT Mingus, authority is the name that you wrote down. I don't like to give people's last names because I'm not trying to get people to get in touch with them or anything. You still talk to him? Is a question mark. And I just say Michael because that's the name. He used his whole name in documentaries. It's just not my habit to use any of the former class members' entire names when I talk about them. No, I haven't talked to him in many years. I had a sense that he might have come into my blog a time or two, or I don't know if he came into my Facebook page. Not with that name though, so I don't know if it was him. But I remember a couple times I got some kind of communication from somebody that for some reason it just occurred to me that that might be him. So I don't know. Yeah, I only do it because for security purposes. I don't want anybody, interfering with Arthodi's vehicle's life, his life in the world right now. I believe he's still in a vehicle. And I hope to learn of any classmates that I think I'll find out about it if I need to find out about it. If somebody leaves their vehicle. Okay, folks. So I'm going to save the talk about R30 for the next stream in relationship to tape 259. Because it wasn't long after that tape, it might have been a little while, it might have been months, that R30 left. And then and then at one point it was talked about him returning to be an observer for a short period of time. I think when we were we were in a craft in North Dallas, I think, at the time, way above Dallas, bunch of miles, but still within traveling distance, probably about a half hour away from northern Dallas. Anyway, so That's the way I remember it. I could be wrong. And how I remember that part. So, if there's nothing else on anybody's mind that they want to put in the chat room, I'm going to call it a night. So good night, folks.